meeting with me today, Harold. Please tell us your full name and a little bit about your family of origin, where you were born and grew up.
Okay, my name is Harold Bach. I was born in Los Angeles, 1938. My parents are European immigrants. My mother was born in Lithuania, and my father was born in Poland. And they came to the States right after World War I, met here, married. Someone told my mother that there were oranges growing in the streets in California in January, and she said, "That's where we're going." Family moved west, and we've been here ever since.
What, if any, religion were you raised in?
We're atheists.
We're atheists. And you were raised as an atheist?
Yes. I'm an industrial designer.
Okay.
Graduated from UCLA in 1961. Spent 46 years in high-tech and aviation industries. The last 10 or 15 years running medium-sized high-tech manufacturing companies.
What does industrial designer mean?
Industrial designers are concerned with the visual appearance of a product and the interface between the product and the user.
Are they also concerned with the assembly process?
Everything.
Okay.
Total concept. It entails everything that engineering would normally entail, but it goes on to the aesthetic quality and interface of the product with the person that's going to use it.
Do you have any degree other than your bachelor's degree?
A master's in industrial design.
Both bachelor's and master's in that same degree. Please tell us what you believe is the social compact and what your understanding of it is.
Social compact. I'm going to use the term social contract. I think if you look back over the history of the United States, even from our founding fathers on forward, there was a mutual understanding within society that each individual owed something to the group, and the group owed something back to the individual. You know, a clear example in my own history. When I started in industry in 1961, we had ups and downs in the various companies I worked for. But the last thing the company would think about at that time in its history was laying people off. If business got slow, we looked for any alternative other than termination. Because we felt there was a mutual responsibility between the company and its employees. So the company had a loyalty to its employees, and not surprisingly, the employees had a loyalty to the company. So it was an understanding between both parties that they owed something to each other than just the employee-employer relationship. I think it was evident in this society when we had commitments to a public education system, especially here in California, that was second to none. And that responsibility went from grammar school all the way up through university. California had a totally free educational system all the way through graduate school. And that was an understanding that society had a responsibility to educate its young, and ultimately those young would come back and support society as it moved forward.
Do you think that the taxpayers of the state of California, it cost them money, or it paid them money to pay for your education?
In the long run, that education was repaid to the state.
Many times over.
Many, many times over. The University of California system was created not only for altruistic purposes, but on the basis that we would have a huge number of highly qualified graduates that would attract industry. And it did. Industries came to California because we had a huge, highly educated workforce. Not only on the university level, but on the trade and technical levels. It was a natural place to come.
The argument is constantly being made in our political process that California is not business friendly because it has high taxes. Would you argue that those high taxes should be higher in order to fund the efforts you were just talking about better?
First of all, that's a fallacy. California only ranks about 18th or 19th in business taxes.
Okay. So it's not even close to the top, really.
It's not even close to the top. That's not a deterrent for companies coming to California. The reason that jobs have left California are not because of high taxes and regulation. First of all, California is where you want to be in most businesses because you have a huge consumer base.
Sure.
Companies have left California primarily because they can get labor cheaper
Elsewhere.
and most of that elsewhere is outside of the United States.
So is there something that California could do to slow or reverse that trend?
No. It is a driving characteristic of capitalism. The manufacturers will go to where the lowest salaries are paid. Even though in the long run, it's self-destructive. You cannot destroy the middle class and expect that middle class to continue to provide the basis of your economy.
To buy your products, to pay your taxes, etc.
That's it. America's prosperity from the 1900s onward was based upon a middle class and working class, and I think they're interchangeable, not distinct from one another. Was based upon a working and middle class that received greater income each year and resulted in greater productivity and bought the products that this industry made. And that was true all the way through the late 1970s when that came to an end. Up through the late 1970s had a labor shortage. There was a greater demand for labor.
It's when we started graduating college and high school that turned around.
Went away because of computerization and advancing technology. In the past, technology had created jobs. Current technology is driven to eliminating jobs, not only in the manufacturing area, but in the service sector. All you have to do is go into a bank today and see how few people are working in the bank. But what also happened is the companies simply shipped to better paying jobs overseas because technology is not nationalistic. Technology is universal in all nations. Other people are just as smart as we are. Their engineers are just as good, but they'll work for a tenth of the salary. So between computerization and the elimination of a lot of what we considered standardized jobs and going overseas in manufacturing and now in technology and even to a certain degree the service sector, jobs went away. And those jobs aren't going to come back.
Let's shift back to the social contract. Why has it frayed, and what, if anything, can we do about it?
First of all, I think there's been a deliberate attempt to segregate our society. And I don't mean on a racial basis.
You mean on a class
basis. Up through the early 1970s, unions were a major protective element in society. Most people in this country, if you ask them, why should I join a union? What are the benefits? You know, the questions I would ask them, do you work 8 hours a day? Yes.
Do you get paid vacation?
Do you get paid vacations?
Do you have health insurance?
Sick leave? Do you have workers' compensation?
Health
Do you have
insurance?
safety guards on the machines? Et cetera, et cetera. Most young Americans have no idea where these benefits came from. They thought they came out of the blue because of the generosity of their individual intelligence. So, with the demise of unions, especially in the industrial sector and clothing, a lot of different industries, not only heavy industry, idea that employers had a responsibility to employees as a group went away. Also, I think there has been a deliberate degradation of education.
So you're saying the people that control the country would rather have an uneducated workforce, or an uneducated electorate, more accurately.
I think they want an uneducated electorate to a greater degree. Now, you know, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. I don't think it is, but I think it's made up of a lot of individual initiatives that have been driven over the years. One, a feeling of the elite that they don't need public schools. They'd rather go to private schools. And I see that here in California. I grew up in a state that provided an unequaled education to everyone. From grammar school through junior high school through high school.
So if you went to Jesuit high school, you didn't get a better education than at your high school?
No, my guess is that you got a lesser education because the LA school system was so much broader in scope and in depth. of the classes that they offered. Also, teaching was considered a revered profession. Teachers had respect in society. I think there has been, and it's a conservative mantra, eggheads. Educators are too smart. Science isn't real. And I think there's been a degradation in the belief in science. Global warming doesn't exist. Evolution doesn't happen. Man walked around with dinosaurs. So is the population less intelligent? I think to a great degree. Most young people don't read newspapers, even though newspapers may not have been the best media of conveying news, but it's a hell of a lot better than 18-second news stories on TV. So yeah, I think another way the social contract was broken in this country, and this may sound very strange, was the elimination of the draft. What we have now is an army of the poor and those that reap the least benefit from society. And it insulates the middle and upper classes from any responsibility for wars that may take place. I would almost guarantee you, with everything that I own, that Iraq would not have happened if we had had a draft. This neighborhood and the neighborhoods west of us, which are even more expensive, they would be out on the picket lines as they were in the...
You can't send my son.
Can't send
Hell
my
no,
son
we won't go.
to Vietnam. Last protest are Vietnam because that's when the draft ended. I think professional armies are bad for democracies because they really don't represent the population, and it insulates the population from taking responsibility for the foreign policy of the country. They don't have to think about it. The wars we had for the last 10 years, so remote for most people, they really didn't know they existed. Taxes didn't go up, there was no sacrifice on anyone's part, and obviously the children of the middle and upper classes didn't go. So I think that was a deterioration of a social contract. You can get into healthcare. We used to have health services in this country. We now have a health industry. The difference between those two terms is significant. Americans are under the false belief that we have the best health system in the world.
We're like 28th or something like that.
We have a very low, 28th or 29th, I don't remember the statistics, on child death. We have the worst prenatal services. We have a shorter life expectancy.
One thing about infant mortality is if you take minorities out of the equation, it shifts.
Yes, but that's a clear demonstration of the inequity in the way health services are provided. But that's even going to get worse because more and more companies are dropping any support for health insurance of their employees. It becomes too expensive. And the worst measurement is that as a nation, we do spend twice as much on health care as any other industrial nations and receive less services in return for it.
Because it's a for-profit industry.
It is a for-profit industry.
And so you think that if we had social medicine to one degree or another, that cost would come down?
I would strongly advocate a single-payer system similar to Medicare, whose overhead is about less than 3% as opposed to 33-38% for private health insurance, with a nationwide pool that would lower the overall health costs. There's another factor in there. American health industry, since it is totally profit-driven, realized that the profit is in cure, not in prevention.
But the cost savings would be in prevention.
The cost savings would be in prevention. If you look at the major European health programs, and I lived in Germany,